morning, everybody. We are here. We are back for week 7 of the Dutch Wonderland. I got my center put together last week, so we have another row of 12-inch blocks to go around, and we have the piece borders. And so this week we're going to start the next round of blocks. For this week we are making this block. And I know it's hard to see with all the colors going on here. And how it's broken down is this way. It's pretty easy. It's a pretty straightforward block. We have a large half square triangle in the middle, small half square triangles in the 4 corners, and then we use Flying Geese for these points. So this week I'm going to go over 4 different ways to do Flying Geese. Yes, 4 different ways. And I'm not going to go over half square triangles, but you would do the traditional ones that we've gone over. I'm going to show you one more time how to mark large half square triangles that are too big for our Pac-Man ruler. So that's what we're going to cover. I'm going to turn you down and we will get started on the Flying Geese. So let's start with Flying Geese. Flying Geese are traditional, everybody. Oh wait, sorry. Let's start with the big half square triangles. I'm just going to go over this really quick one more time in case somebody didn't catch it the first time we did it a couple blocks ago. It is pretty easy, but usually you just lay a ruler on and mark line to line, but what I recommend you do when they get this big is you use the 45-degree line. Actually, it doesn't matter what size it is. You lay the 45-degree line on the square and point to point. And for half square triangles, what I do is I slide it over. So the 45-degree line is on the bottom. The 1/4 inch line is point to point, and then I draw a line, and then I just flip it around and repeat on the other side. One, that helps you get away from the chewed up end if you're like me and you've used your ruler forever, and 2, it gives you your sewing line versus your cutting line, or your center line. And you can now use the 1/4 inch line from point to point, and you can do the 1/2 inch line on the line you've just drawn to make sure everything is accurate. The more points of reference you can use when you mark these, the more accurate you're going to be. So that's how I mark the large triangles, the large squares for triangles. And there those are. And so that's pretty straightforward. And like I said, we need to make little half square triangles, again, just like we have from the start. So let's get into the Flying Geese. First, we're going to go over traditional method. This is how all our patterns are written because it requires no special tools. I do, however, like to mark my pieces with our Pac-Man ruler, our Creative Grids non-slip multi-size 6-inch Flying Geese 45-90-degree triangle. And so to do Flying Geese, you first take your square and you have to mark it. And normally they have you mark from point to point and just draw a line. But then you're only using 2 little points for reference. So I use the right angle part of the ruler and I align the top of the ruler with the square, the side of the ruler with the square, the 3.5 inch line with the square, and just draw my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So this is how you mark these. Then you lay it onto the rectangle, aligning the outer edges of both the square and the rectangle, and you sew from point to point. The line you've drawn is where your 1/4 inch foot goes. So your 1/4 inch foot edge would go on the line, you sew from point to point, and then you can flip this out. This is just like the flip and sew we did last week, but now we're using it for Flying Geese. So you do one side, you trim, and you press, and you have 2 options here. You can trim both layers away, or you can just cut out the center layer and leave this back layer as your guide. I tend to trim both layers because I'm all about getting rid of bulk in a quilt, but if you don't think this lined up properly, you can do that so you have that back edge to use as a guide. So that's the first wing. Then you do the same thing on the other side. And again, trim, press open. And how you can tell if your pieces are accurate is you need to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the point of the triangle to the edge of the squares. This part is more important than any other part because when you go to sew, you want your needle to hit right at the point of the triangle. That being said, if you're just starting out and you can hit you can't hit on the triangle, try to hit above the triangle. It's less likely to be noticed than if you cut off the point of your triangle going lower. But if you mark your squares this way and sew them on, you should have a 1/4 inch there with no issues. So that's traditional Flying Geese. Now this is what this ruler is truly meant for. This is for making Flying Geese without having to mark squares. You just cut your pieces. So how you do that is for the goose part, you use this side of the ruler and you'd cut 3.5 inch strips for this guy because we want 3.5 by 6.5 finish. And so we're going to align the ruler with the 3.5 inch line on the strip and cut. And that creates the body of the goose or the goose itself. Then we've got to cut our sky pieces. So you take another piece of 3.5 inch strip fabric, and now this time what I like to do is keep them right sides together and cut 2 at a time, but they're going to be mirror image of each other, so that I've found it does not matter. I mean, you could put it like this or you could put it like this, but I like having a mirror. I don't know why, I just do. So you can do it however, but I lay them up right sides together. I put the ruler on the strip, aligning the top, the side, and the 3.5 inch line, and I cut. Now I have my 2 wings for this guy, and they go like that. So I have the blunt end at the bottom, the pointy end at the top. Like I said, I've done it both ways where they could be exactly the same. It still works out fine. But for whatever reason, I feel like we need to do it this way. So then I align the blunt end with the cut triangle. And I'm aligning this edge of the triangle and this edge of the triangle, the 2 triangles. And this should just fall where it's going to fall. If you align the bulk of the triangles together, instead of saying, oh, I need to get this lower, but then it doesn't line up, you really want to line up the 2 triangles and not worry about the ends. The ends will work themselves out. Then you go ahead and you sew. Now this one I did it the other way, but you start here at the top and you sew your 1/4 inch seam, and then you press this open. And then once you've pressed that open, you lay the second one on, press that one open, and again, still need to have your 1/4 inch there and there, but you're not marking triangles. You're cutting everything at once. You can cut multiples. That being said, the traditional method, if you mark the squares this way, out of these 2 methods, is more accurate. This one is it's good. It works. I've done this multiple times. I just finished a Halloween one and I cut everything. I didn't mark all my squares. So it really depends on how much time I have, how many Flying Geese are in the quilt, and how big they are. The bigger they are, the more slush you have. If you're doing really tiny ones, I would mark them like this. If you're doing bigger ones like this, you can just cut them with the ruler the way the ruler is designed and have perfectly working Flying Geese. And if you're better sewer than me, yours are probably going to be much more accurate. But as you can see, that was done that way and that looks spot on. So those are the first 2 methods. The second method, or the third method, is cutting squares. So let me get all my pieces here. So you need to cut your square, one large square, 4 small squares, and then the large square we cut on both diagonals to get 4 Flying Geese bodies, or 4 Flying Geese bodies, and the little guys we cut on one diagonal. Okay, and then you are this one is how you would do it if you really just want to be 100% sure that you're accurate. You would put this guy on here, you would sew it on, repeat, you get your finished piece. So here it is sewn on, here's the other one sewn on, and then you take this, and there's a ruler from Creative Grids, which we will have in the stores soon. They're on back order, I'm waiting for them. This is the Ultimate Flying Geese ruler. You could just use a regular ruler to trim these up, but this one makes it super accurate. So on the ruler, I'll get you some white to look at. You should see the studio when I'm done with this class, as I've got pieces everywhere. Alright, so on this ruler, you have lots of sizes. It tells you, first of all, it tells you how big to cut it for the next two methods. This is the traditional cross-cut method, and then I'm going to show you the heart method. Either of these can be done without the ruler. This just makes it much easier to trim it up. And I recommend, if you do a lot of flying geese like me and you want to have them super accurate, this is another way to go. So first it gives you the finished size of your flying geese. In this case, we're doing a 3x6. So my large square that I cut here is 7 3/4. And then I had to cut 4 small square. Oh, I'm doing a 2x4 here. Sorry. For the pattern, it's 3x6. For my examples, I use 2x4. So this is 5 3/4, and these are 3 1/4. Now you're going to cut these no matter if you do this method or the next one I'm showing you. They're both the same on here. So, and when you do it this way, you end up with 4 finished flying geese. So if you're not doing something scrappy, this works well. So there's your goose, and then you have on the ruler, it says trim 1, number 1, and I'm doing a 2" by 4" flying geese. So if I just follow this up, I'm on D. So I lay D on, let me do it on the mat so you can see it. All these pieces out of the way. So I'm on D. I would lay D onto the body of the goose, which is this line right here, and I can trim the 2 sides. Then once I've trimmed those 2 sides, which is here, it's already trimmed, I can flip the goose and the ruler over, and now I'm using the D again, finding my centers. But now, along with this V, we should also be aligning the side edges. And like I said earlier, the more points of reference you can use when you're trimming stuff, the more accurate your block will be. And then you would cut those 2 sides to end up with a perfect 2.5 by 4.5 inch flying goose. So we're traditional method, there's no trimming. You don't have to trim it, so it goes faster, but you have to be more accurate on how you mark it. The same thing with the Pac-Man ruler method. These are accurate, you don't trim them up afterwards, but you have more room for some variation. This, you're making it bigger, cutting it smaller. So that's the traditional cross-cut way. And then the final way is the heart ruler way. And this way works awesome, especially if you're using a layer cake. Actually, both of these are great for layer cakes because you can get, there's no waste in either method, and you can get 4 perfect flying geese out of it. So this one again, these are finishing at 2.5, so we're following the chart again. You're going to cut 5 3/4 and then 4 of these guys that are 3 1/4. So that's step 1. And the one thing I do have to say is that 8 instructions. And if you happen to lose your instructions, they're online. You just go to the Creative Grids USA website, say what ruler you have, and you can print them off. So everything I'm showing you today are in these ruler instructions. And I can let you guys know when those come in if anyone is interested. So the heart method is you lay this square on, or you lay this square down, then you put 2 square, I still mark them. They tell you to just go from point to point and use your 1/4 inch foot like you do half square triangles, but I still mark them with my old ruler. I'm old school, I guess. I lay this on here and I'm marking my sewing lines. Okay, doesn't tell you to do that, you don't have to do that, but that's what I do. So I'm marking it here to here, and what I'm doing is showing you this. You would put your 1/4 inch foot edge on the center, and you would sew here, flip it over 1/4 inch foot, and sew there. I'm marking it. You don't have to if you have one of those Creative Grids Clearly Perfect, not Creative Grids, the Clearly Perfect Angler I talked about having on your sewing machine, but I want it to be accurate. So I marked, and then I pinned these 2. Then you sew on this dotted line, and you sew on this dotted line. So that's here, and that creates this unit. And then we're going to cut this unit from point to point. So there we go, we've cut it. That's it finished, we cut it. Now we take these and we're going to press these triangles up. So they kind of look like cat ears. So there's one unit and there's the other unit. So we've cut them, pressed them open. Now on each of these units, we are going to place another one of our squares, because remember we cut 4 small squares for the one big square. And again, I marked them, and you line it up. That's the other reason I mark them, is so I can see where I line it up. And you sew from here to here, and you sew from here to here. Once you've done that, so these are the 2. Again, we're making 4 at a time. Then once I've done that, you can go ahead and you can cut these in half, and that will get you that and that. So now I have 4 flying geese, and then we can go back to our trim ruler and use the trim ruler exactly like we did for the first method, where you lay it on here, you find your measurements, you square up trim side number 1, flip it over, flip the ruler over, and trim side number 2. So of the 4 methods, the last 2 are the most accurate, mainly because you are trimming up after you sew it. Of the piece methods, the traditional way with marked squares is the most accurate. So I've given you 4 different ways to do flying geese. The pattern is written traditional, so if you cut traditional, that's what I would recommend doing. It's still my favorite method, but I have to say that these methods, if you don't mind squaring up your blocks, are very, very handy, especially if you're doing something where accuracy is like super critical. It's always critical, but sometimes it's like I can't be off or else that quilt will not pop together. So back to our block. So again, this was a pretty quick and easy one this week. Half square triangle, half square triangle, half square triangle, half square triangle. And then we had the 4 flying geese. And again, you can see we're still doing the we are still doing the black on one half and the white on the other half. Does anyone see my mistake? These 2 need to swap. So don't look at my block as a reference. And again, we're all human, we make mistakes, but let me show you how it should lay out exactly, correctly. So it goes, you want to think about the colors. Again, the backgrounds, that's always the key on this one, is do your backgrounds balance. So that is all of the black. This is, maybe I don't have that right. No, I do. So that goes like that. This goes like this. This goes like this. And the issue was I don't have, oh no, that's right. So there should be 3 blacks and only 1 white. And for some reason I just need to flip those. So there you go. So you can see the black background goes on one side and the white background goes on the other. And we only have to make 4 of these this week. And that's it for this block. So, okay. That's it for this week, are those 4 blocks. I do want to let you know I did just post a quilt tutorial for our Midas Touch quilt, which I have to say is probably one of my favorite ones I've made lately. That's over on YouTube. We are posting videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on YouTube, so if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hop on over there to the Whimsical Workshop. We are trying to reach 1,000 followers on YouTube, so if you have any quilty friends that you could, course to go sign up over there, I'd appreciate it. It's all quilting, all fun. I do projects, unboxing videos, organization videos, cutting videos. I do have the Cricut Maker that I'm starting to throw videos up for, so we're constantly adding content there. And I hope that you guys have a good week. I hope to see some blocks next week, but I understand life happens. If I didn't have this every week, I'm not sure I'd be as far as I am. But once you finish last week's blocks, you could put your center together. I did shoot video while I sewed the center, and I was going to add it to the end, but if anyone wants to see that before the end video, let me know and I will get it up sooner as its own video. I was just going to combine it with the quilt top assembly. And I think that's it for this week. Alright, well you guys have a good week. You stay out there and stay safe and have fun. And let me know if you have questions during the week, just give me an email. Talk to you next week. Bye! I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.